This is Neil Schneider for MTBS-TV at CES 2014. Joining me is Steve Nguyen, who's Vice President of Marketing for Sixense. Welcome to the program, Steve.
Thank you, Neil. I'm happy to be here.
Now let's talk a little bit about the history of Sixense. Now you have a history of licensing technology to other companies. Can you elaborate a little bit as to what you've done?
Sure. We specialize in motion tracking using electromagnetic technology that gives us very precise position and orientation. We know exactly where your hand is and what positions it's in. And as a company, we licensed our technology early on, and one of our licensees was Razer, and they brought out a product for motion tracking and control of games called the Hydra.
Now this Hydra, and maybe I'm being a bit modest here, very popular. I mean, it's really exciting stuff. Can you elaborate some of the things that were possible with Hydra that we hadn't seen before?
Sure. Because it's not a simple accelerometer-based technology, it actually knows where you are. Developers are able to take advantage of that. They're able to do really innovative and dramatically engaging mechanics in a game. For instance, you could be running in a first-person shooter and grab a grenade off your chest and throw it behind you, or you could attack a zombie off-screen. And because it's so precise, we'd actually engage with that enemy on off-screen precisely, whether it's a headshot or shooting, two-handed play, shooting over an obstacle. All of that is possible. It really opens up the gameplay, makes it more immersive.
I'd say within the last year, 2 years, I mean, obviously there's this big excitement around virtual reality with products like Oculus and other things coming around the bend, that Razer Hydra has really been a kind of like a sandbox tool that people have been using to prepare for the VR to come. But now you're taking it up a level. Now, instead of licensing, I understand you're doing your own thing. You recently had a successful Kickstarter. Maybe you could elaborate a bit as to what you were working on.
With the introduction of the Oculus Rift and its popularity, it really drove home the notion to the consumer, the gamer, that they needed a different, more immersive form of input for VR. And VR gaming specifically led us to the STEM system, which is a wireless 5-tracker unit. So you can track things like your head or your torso, both hands, both feet, get your full body into the experience. And in the VR environment, it's all about staying immersed in that experience, an uninterrupted experience that allows not only new forms of gameplay, but a new form of interaction and immersion for the consumer and the gamer. So it's something very different and very engaging.
So this is very exciting stuff. Remind me, do you remember how much money was made out of the Kickstarter?
Yeah, we ended up right around $605,000. We initially targeted a $250,000 campaign, which we achieved relatively quickly. And the gaming community, they're just ready for something really engaging and immersive, and the VR is the catalyst, and the Oculus Rift is one of the things that drove us to that. And so the STEM system is our first consumer product.
Very exciting stuff, because the first thing I noticed about the STEM system, I think it's the first thing everybody noticed about the STEM system, is it's wireless, because originally the Razer Hydra, which was licensed out from Sixense, was really opened a lot of minds, but suddenly we have this very practical tool that people can use. Now, you mentioned that you could suddenly have control of all your joints and your arms and your legs and so on. Can you elaborate a little more as to how that works?
Sure. The STEM system is really designed as an open platform. So we have an open SDK that allows software integrators software developers to integrate fully in the game. And when they do that, they get to take advantage of the tracking and create all kinds of new motion mechanics. Additionally, from a hardware perspective, it's also an open platform. So the STEM is a modular system. Here's a STEM.
Hold it up so the camera can see. Yes.
So it's a very small module, and this provides the position orientation. So hardware developers take this, and they can add their own value to the system, and they can build like a very precise golf club or a tennis racket that you can put top spin and underspin and side spin on. So it really, again, changes the game for everybody.
So just as a comparison, originally when the technology was based on 2 controllers connected with wires to a sphere, which put out this magnetic field, I gather, to detect how the controllers were positioned. But you're going way beyond that now. Yes, maybe you could hold up one of the STEM controllers.
So there's the STEM controller. So typically a gamer might use this controller with a joystick and more of a traditional button layout with the joysticks, and we'd have one in each hand. But a hardware developer could take this STEM module, attach it to, say, the middle of your chest or at your ankles, so you can have a full body experience. So you can do something like a fighting game. where you're using your whole body to interact with the virtual world. And it really, again, changes things from a more of a sit-down experience with two hands to a full-body experience. You can see your full-body avatar in the game, and what your avatar is doing really reflects what you're doing. So instead of just pushing, your legs move, your legs move. You kick, you kick. So it's a really great experience.
Now, what about range? I mean, you're talking about all this action, kicking, moving your arms. I mean, there's going to be a lot of healthy gamers out there with all this extra activity. What kind of range can you achieve from your, the source?
The base unit casts a field of about an 8-foot diameter. That gives us a 16-foot sphere in which to play, which is more than enough room for everybody to play. So we can have multiplayer in that sphere, or we can have a very active individual guy running around in there. So yeah, it's plenty of range for the full experience. It also supports the desktop range, so we can be near for the desktop mode, and we can be far for the living room mode. It just, again, takes the experience, opens it up for developers, and opens it up for gamers so they can have the experience they choose.
Now, and I'm using Oculus as an example, but I would anticipate there's going to be several products coming to market, all very exciting, all innovative. But that's the visual side of things, and game developers are kind of getting their feet wet with VR and starting to learn what the challenges are. Do you find that in the case of Sixense that you're playing the other side of the field, which is the motion side? Do you find game developers are approaching, or software makers are approaching you to learn about this technology? What response have you had from the software world?
It's been very, very healthy and very, very gratifying, if you will. So the game developers are clearly some of the first in the game, pardon the pun, as they understand the user experience and how it's changing. But other companies and other developers from different industries are approaching us as well. It's the precision, it's the ability to track the full body, it's the ability to move in space freely, to turn around with no issues of line of sight. All of those things that are inherent in our technology make it a very different thing for developers in general. And when you talk about the VR experience, Oculus is first. They're a great company and they make great technology, and others will come in because this industry is clearly more than gaming. It could be virtual tourism, it could be exploration for scientific purposes, it could be educational, all kinds of uses for VR now that people are, the resurgence in VR I think is very real this time. And we're in a position because when you're in a VR environment you need motion tracking. It's not enough to have the old forms of input. You really need something more immersive.
Well, let's talk about some software partners. I mean, I take it this is Portal 2 I'm seeing here. Can you elaborate as to what we're looking at here?
We are working with Valve to create a version of Portal. We've already done that in the past for motion control, something called Portal 2 Motion Pack. And what you're seeing in the background is a VR version of that, or a virtual reality version of that. And again, because it's a motion tracking technology, we're able to incorporate into the game new kinds of mechanics. Things like stretching objects and giving them extra physics like weight as they get bigger. Portal surfing, taking your portal that you've already shot in the floor and moving it around, or stepping into that and being able to move yourself around. And even the full body avatar, if Scott looks down, he can see his full body. So he can see Chell, so he's Chell.
Now, Valve, of course, is a very forward-thinking company. They've been, very gung-ho with VR support in practice, not just in words. Do you, in your opinion, do you think it's going to be the independent game developers and software makers that adopt this technology first? Do you think it's being well regarded by the AAA game developers? How do you find the adoption? Where do you think it's going to happen?
Well, Valve is certainly an example of a great AAA developer, and we work with them, as you know. And so they're a good example of a company that's very well established with a broad distribution network, a lot of followers with great games. But as you said, don't underestimate the indies. The indies are really all about a new experience, and they're building new experiences every day. And so the indies have a real significant role here as well. We work with both types of developers. As you said, we have a great relationship with Valve, but we also have great relationships with a number of independent developers. And many of them have reached out to us now that they've seen what the STEM system can do, and they've seen what the VR groundswell, and they see that as a great opportunity to create whole new forms of gameplay. And in many respects, it's a little bit easier for them because they're starting with lower overhead, simpler pipelines, and new creativity, and they're bringing a new think to the game. So we have both, and I think both are the key, but indies play a great role.
Now, call it a personal opinion. I mean, I look at the last 10 years of video games, and I'm not sure really if that much has changed. Yes, we have more pixels, we have more special effects, but the fundamentals of how games are put together hasn't really changed that much. I mean, you think back at, look at John Carmack's Doom. I mean, the basic map of Doom has just been multiplied 100 times over, but it's still Doom. That's what a first-person shooter is. Now, do you see technologies like this and other VR displays? Do you think that we're starting to look at a new category of game development? Like, is it kind of like a love me or leave me relationship? Leave me as in just continue doing what you're doing. Love me as in creating something completely brand new, 100% about VR. Like, where do you think things are going to go?
Well, I think absolutely we're going to see a movement towards an immersive type of game, a VR type of game. Just taking what exists and porting it into that environment is not really the best user experience possible. Portal 2 is a great example of the motion pack version of Portal 2 that we produced. Really takes advantage of the mechanics. So let's say if you're attacking an opposing player, normally you just have zones that you attack in, but now you can actually be very precise. Right? You can choose to hit them in a particular location. You can choose to lop off their arm or something strange like that, or being able to run and attack off screen, or throw a grenade over your shoulder with physics so it goes further the harder you throw. Or solve a puzzle and interact with the environment in that puzzle. Pick up and look underneath a book. Or you have to hold it in a certain angle. Or flip a light switch. So instead of hitting a button to flip a light switch, just walk over, hit a button. Flip the switch itself. So all of those kinds of things add to what the player is experiencing. It makes it more engaging and more involving. And everybody's moving in that direction. Whether they do it in VR or VR with motion or motion alone, it's going to happen.
Now, what I'm seeing is, I purposely held off on certain interviews towards the end of CES because I wanted to see the bits and pieces that were on the show floor. Do you think that we're looking at a combination of products to make the ultimate experience? Do you think any of these products, including your own, could really be successful just in their own right, or do you really need a combination to make things work?
Well, it's an interesting question. I think the answer is, in fact, a more of an ecosystem approach, where companies will do what they do best. For instance, we do motion tracking best. We do some great game development as well, and software development with some new products. And I think the consumer will benefit from all of that. The coalescing of great minds, if you will, as great companies, both big and small, try to look at this opportunity, this ability to make a great immersive user experience, and say, well, this is what we do best. Those guys do this best. Let's come together, right? Let's combine our resources and make better play, or take advantage of things like, for instance, the Oculus Rift. It's a great technology and a great company, great devices. We work perfectly well with them, right? So I think we're going to see a lot of that, where the consumer will get more choice. There'll be companies that, sure, they want to do vertical integration, and that's great. But at the end of the day, the consumer will benefit, the game player will benefit, and we'll have a whole new industry with a whole new look to it in just a few years.
Now, I would say that a lot of the development that I've seen so far have been independents. Like Sixense is an independent, Oculus is an independent, the game developers are independent, but there isn't really a single vision of what VR will ultimately be. And I ask each one what they see as the ultimate vision, the ultimate experience. How would you describe the ultimate VR experience?
Well, that's an unexpected question. I would say it's when you really disappear, when you bridge the gap between the physical and the virtual world, and you forget. Right? You're actually completely in it emotionally. You almost feel physically engaged, you're intellectually engaged, and you forget that you're using an input system, or you forget that you're on a treadmill, or you forget that you're wearing a headset. And when that happens, we've accomplished our goal, right? It's a totally new environment for people, and that's what I think is the end goal.
Excellent, excellent. So what's the availability of Sixense? When can we start to see the product? When is Portal 2 with the upgrades going to be available? What can you tell us?
Well, I can tell you that here at CES is the first time we're showing the actual STEM system prototypes, and we are showing Portal 2 in VR for the first time as well. The STEM system itself will ship in the July timeframe. Our shipments will begin in July to our Kickstarter backers, and we hope by then as well to be shipping this version of Portal.
Do you see this as a retail product? Do you see it something that's going to be marketed online? How do you think VR is going to be best distributed to customers?
Well, from our perspective, we're going to be distributing online directly. And then as we bring out new versions of the STEM system over time, we'll look for other avenues of distribution. But right now, for us as a small company, we'll probably stick with online distribution through our own website and some other partners that we're working on.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Just one more point to cover. You have a secondary product called, well, I shouldn't call it secondary, but you have a second product called MakeVR. Can you quickly elaborate as to what this is about?
Sure. MakeVR is actually a 3D modeling and printing application that's designed for everyone. And we believe that within this market of 3D printing, which is a brand new market for the consumer, is really revolutionizing manufacturing. But the consumers are a huge group of people who are looking at a new way to express their creativity, a new way to bring products to market right into their home. And the thing that holds them back in general is not necessarily just a low-cost printer. It's a creative experience that's seamless and fun and engaging. MakeVR does that. By taking advantage of the capabilities of the STEM system and tracking, combining that with an extremely innovative 3D modeling environment, you get that seamless bridge between the virtual and the physical world, and you even take it all the way to the printer. So you can print. Let me just grab this little guy here. This little fire hydrant would normally be in a typical print 3D modeling application, very difficult to make. You need some training, etc. It takes about 2 minutes in MakeVR. It's a fully healed product. You can print right to companies like Shapeways. You can print right to your home printer. And it's a tremendous user experience. It really expresses your creativity, and that's what MakeVR is all about.
I think that may actually be a critical market, because while gaming is developing and people are wrapping their minds around this technology, it sounds like this is a short-term, low-hanging fruit opportunity for Sixense and similar VR companies that there's like an instant need. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's actually more than low-hanging fruit. It's a huge market. I mean, analysts, I think, are predicting as big as a $25 billion market by 2025. And the consumers, they don't want to deal with complexity. They want a great user experience. And as a gaming company and as an input tracking technology company, that's what we're all about, making a great user experience. And so by bringing our vision of the user experience and our tracking technology and our software and combining that all together, you get what we think is a killer app for the 3D printing, where literally everyone can 3D print, whether they're kids in classrooms working together in collaboration mode, or they're traveling dads who want to build a soapbox derby with their kid. He's in Paris and his kid's back in DC or something. I mean, that's what it's all about, making it possible for everybody to do this, and why leave it to just the pros?
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We've been speaking with Steve Nguyen, VP of Marketing for Sixense. We'll be back with more from CES 2014. One more interesting point. Joining me is Danny Whittle from Sixense, and he's going to explain what all this extra stuff is on the Oculus Rift.
So what we're seeing here is the guts of the controller. So up here you can see this is where all the face buttons are and the joystick. And then we have our DSP and the actual STEM module itself and the battery pack. And the reason we did this is, number one, this will actually be the STEM module. We're just not quite ready with that yet. But we've put this on the Rift so that we could get position tracking. And this will help out with a lot of the nausea, as well as we can do things like physically crouch in the world, and you can actually crouch and you can lean around corners and stuff. Now we have a representation of your head and your hands, so if you move everything in sequence together, we can actually turn the whole character body with you.